The cameras were rolling. The lights were hot. Donald Trump leaned forward with that familiar smirk, the kind of grin that usually meant someone was about to be torn apart. But this time, he wasn't ready, because what Zohran Mamdani said next made even him freeze. For a split second, the room went still. Reporters blinked. The crowd shifted in their seats. And in that silence, something historic happened. On Twitter, headlines began to explode. Trump silenced? Mamdani's moment. Cable networks looped the clip over and over again. Commentators leaned in, replaying that one line that turned power upside down. The sound of a heartbeat echoed under the chaos. A slow, rising rhythm that felt less like a debate and more like a reckoning. Because this wasn't just a clash of words. It was a generational collision, a passing of the torch no one saw coming. But to understand how one sentence could silence a man who never stops talking, we have to go back. America had grown tired. Tired of division, of shouting matches disguised as leadership. Every headline, every debate, every tweet felt like another punch thrown. Trump's voice had dominated the airwaves for nearly a decade. Loud, brash, unstoppable. But something was shifting. People were searching for new energy, a new kind of leadership. And that's where Zohran Mamdani entered the story. A young voice from Queens, the child of Ugandan Indian immigrants, who carried both the weight of struggle and the hope of renewal. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't born into power, but he had something America was beginning to crave: conviction. In every word he spoke there was purpose. Where Trump towered over skylines, Zohran stood grounded in the streets that raised him. He'd fought housing battles, knocked on doors, listened to stories of survival. He didn't chase the cameras, they started chasing him. This wasn't just a debate. It was a battle for the soul of New York, the immigrant son versus the billionaire mogul, dignity versus dominance, truth versus theatrics. And somewhere deep in that tension, millions felt the pulse of something new, the idea that maybe power could sound different. But long before the two ever met under those stage lights, they were already on a collision course, built by two very different Americas. Trump's America was one of towers, gold, and noise. He was the master of spectacle, a man who knew how to make attention itself a form of power. From real estate to reality TV to the White House, his empire wasn't built on silence. It was built on volume. Reporters cut off mid-sentence, rivals mocked, critics humiliated. Every stage became a battlefield, every opponent became a headline. He understood something dangerous, that if you never stop talking, you never have to listen. But that old trick was starting to lose its shine, because now, a new generation was emerging, one that didn't flinch when power shouted in its face. For years, power had been measured in noise. But in this new America, power was beginning to look like something else: purpose. And soon in front of millions, those old tactics were about to fail. Spectacularly, Zohran Mamdani wasn't raised on applause. He was raised on persistence. The child of immigrants who had lost a home and built another from scratch, he learned early that change doesn't come from talking over people. It comes from hearing them. If you want to serve people, he often said, first you must listen. As a young activist, he spent nights at housing rallies, mornings helping tenants fight eviction, and days studying how policy could protect the powerless. Every door slammed in his face became another reason to keep knocking. Every insult turned into fuel. While Trump built towers of glass, Zohran was building something stronger: trust. And when he finally stepped onto that debate stage, he carried not just his words, but the weight of everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong in the conversation. The lights came up. The crowd buzzed. The moderators shuffled their notes nervously. This wasn't just a debate. It was theater, and everyone knew who the star usually was. Trump leaned back, confident, ready. He opened with his trademark bravado: "I've built cities. This kid hasn't even built a career." Laughter rippled through the room, but Zohran didn't flinch. He sat quietly, hands folded, eyes steady, waiting. And when he finally spoke, his voice was calm, even gentle. But every word landed like a hammer. He didn't match Trump's energy, he redirected it. He turned every interruption into a pause, every insult into an opening. The tension grew. Trump's jokes started to stumble. His timing broke. For the first time in years, the man who made chaos his weapon looked uneasy, and then Zohran stopped being polite. The room hushed. Cameras zoomed in. He took a breath and said, "You've spent your life building towers, Mr. Trump. I've spent mine building trust. One of these will still stand when the cameras go dark." Gasps. Silence. Even Trump blinked, searching for words that wouldn't come. Within seconds, the moment was everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. Commentators couldn't get enough. He ended Trump with a smile. Dignity hits harder than ego. Where others shouted, he spoke. Where others postured, he revealed. And that silence, that rare, precious silence, had become louder than any speech. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Late-night shows replayed the clip. Comedians turned it into punchlines. Political strategists called it a generational shift. Supporters said it was poetic justice, the voice of calm finally cutting through the chaos. Critics called it disrespectful, but even they couldn't deny one thing: it landed. In a single exchange, America saw something deeper than debate. They saw the old guard tremble, and a new one rise. The views hit millions. Think pieces flooded the internet. And amid the noise, one question lingered. Was this the end of Trump's dominance, or just the beginning of something bigger? When the camera stopped rolling, Zohran didn't celebrate. No grand gestures. No victory lap. He simply said, "It's never about who wins the argument. It's about who moves the people." Even Trump, for a fleeting moment, seemed to understand. There was a quiet nod, not of defeat but of recognition. A rare acknowledgement that power doesn't always come from the loudest voice. Power doesn't shout, Zohran said later in an interview. It listens. And in that single idea lay the moral of this new American moment. That leadership isn't about dominance, it's about direction. Not ego, but empathy. The camera pans across the New York skyline. Lights flickering, a city that never sleeps but always changes. Somewhere in those streets, a young man once knocked on doors, hoping someone would listen. Now the whole world was. In that silence, America heard something new. A leadership that didn't need to yell to be powerful. A truth that didn't need to insult to be strong. And as the story closes, one line stays echoing in the air. Respect earned. Legacy renewed. If you believe in courage with class, subscribe, share, and be part of this new wave. A wave that believes leadership is not about how loud you are, but how deeply you care. Because sometimes, the loudest message is spoken softly.